All right, well, good evening, everyone. This is Gary Trindle, Chair of the Hopkinton Planning Board, and I hereby call our August 8th, 2022 meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. This open meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with the previously signed and act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This act includes an extension of the remote meeting provisions of Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The new law has two parts. First, the new law allows public bodies to continue providing live, adequate alternative means of public access to the deliberations of the public body instead of holding meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. Second, the new law authorizes all members of the public body to continue participating in meetings remotely. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting is being broadcast through HCAM and or by HCAM through multiple channels. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. With regards to public comments, not every agenda item will feature public comment. For those with public comment, after members of the board have spoken, the chair will afford public comment. Please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and always begin with your name and address. You will be afforded 3 minutes for your questions and comments. Finally, each vote taken in the meeting will be conducted by roll call. So let's do our quick attendance check here. Members, when I state your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe here.
Rob Benson.
Rob here.
Brenda Young.
Brenda Young, present.
And Jane, I don't think Jane's here yet. Ronnie.
Ron Prefer, present.
Elise. I don't think she's here yet. Paul.
Paul Ostrander, present.
All right. And as I mentioned, Dave Paul will not be joining us tonight. Staff, when I state your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Gelsich.
John Gelsich, present.
Ms. Pemberton.
Stephanie Pemberton, present.
And Mr. Paradis.
Phil Paradis and Beta, present.
Thank you, Phil. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get going. We do have a heavy administrative agenda tonight. And we'll go through those in a few minutes. And then we have one public hearing for 83 East Main Street over by Legacy Farms and Western Nurseries. But let's go straight to the administrative stuff. The first one is an announcement for us. And as you've probably heard, Dave Paul has resigned from the planning board. I do want to take just a moment to acknowledge Dave. He's been one of our longest standing members of the board. I always appreciate his honesty, his integrity. I think that he genuinely does this because he wants to support Hopkinton, and it's a town that he had lived in for a very long time. But he is also no longer a resident of Hopkinton, and therefore cannot serve as a member of the board. So if people are interested in applying for the position, John, do you just want to quickly highlight the application process and where people can find more information?
Sure. So they can email me. We are going to tomorrow post the vacancy announcement on the town's website and through local media. So you can probably see it in a lot of different places there, but you basically apply through the town's website for the boards and committees, and we'll ask you some information, why you want to serve and why the board should select you to fill in for that vacancy.
All right, thanks, John. And just so people are aware, this will be an appointment that will serve through or until the next town election, which is, I don't know the exact date, but is currently scheduled for mid-May of next year. So it is a relatively short-term appointment. At that point, the person could opt to run for a longer-term position. But I know I will miss Dave. I won't always miss his comments at the end of a meeting that always seem to stretch things out a little bit. But like I said, I think that he was such a champion for Hopkinton, and we are all grateful and lucky to have had his engagement for as long as we did. The second administrative item on our agenda, a stormwater management permit determination, and this is for the Eversource property over at 5255 Wilson Street. I see Tim, who else from Ty and Bond? I'm not sure who's going to be.
Jim Blackburn as well.
Hi, Jim.
For Eversource. How are you? So I think we've got, we have Tim from Ty and Bond. I think also we have a few other folks on the call, but I think between Tim and I will probably handle or field all the questions that you have.
Okay, great. Who wants to kick it off and tell us why you are before us this evening?
I can kick it off. So we're basically here. So the property is 55 Wilson Street, and I think you're all familiar with it. And basically what we're looking to do is a minor alteration to the limit of work that was previously proposed. And the catalyst for this whole thing is we basically want to relocate some landscaping further away from the fence than it was originally shown. It's mainly due to safety and access. There's a 15-foot wide, basically access way around the existing perimeter fence, and we're basically looking to continue that through the new project that we're doing. It's generally because if you put landscaping that close to a fence, the fear is always that somebody could climb that landscaping and use it to gain access to the facility. And I can do a screen share if you'd like to see exactly what we're talking about. So this was the original landscape plan that we sent out, and it basically is the same. The two minor changes that we're proposing is we had some landscaping shown here that we're not going to put in because there's an existing arborvitae hedge that actually does a pretty good job of screening the facility from the street. So it doesn't make any sense to rip that down and put in smaller plantings. So that's going to remain as is. But the other thing is this here, you can see that there's landscaping right up to the edge of the fence. And what we'd like to do is pull that further away and then basically loam and seed the entire area behind the fence. And I know town council had some questions earlier, and I think it's because there's some confusion about where we're talking here. So this is the existing arborvitae hedge that's there now. And we're not proposing to do anything with that because it provides pretty good screening.
Sorry, Tim, where are you? I don't know if you updated slides or if you pointed something.
Oh, sorry. Can you see it?
No.
I can see your cursor.
You
Is that what you're?
Can you see the aerial or the street view?
No. Mm-mm. I wonder if you're just sharing the file and not your screen.
You know what? Let's share. Let's try this. How about this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So this is the hedge that I was just talking about that originally way back when we had talked about clearing this and replanting it, but it doesn't make sense to do that because it provides some significant screening from the facility. What we're talking about is actually back here. If you look at this gravel area, there's a scale house there now, and the landscaping that we're talking about is behind that scale house. So I think town council was worried about how this would affect the visual buffer from the street. And I guess the answer to that is that it won't. It's a minor modification to an area that's not actually even going to really be seen from the street. And from a stormwater perspective, it's a betterment because it's, we're ripping out scrub growth that's there. It doesn't really show up in this picture, but basically taking out scrub growth, loaming and seeding the embankment, and then putting landscaping back in. So from a stormwater perspective, it's an improvement. You're actually reducing the curve number out there. And I think that was the crux of his comments, basically about why. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So just a couple of quick questions. And number one, I hear you that it's not as close to the road, but this picture is taken from the entry, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see the affected area from the street.
Kind of. So let me show you another. I'm
Yep.
going to stop sharing and show you an aerial so that you can better see what is there now. So this picture is more recent. This is an aerial image. So you can see that this is the scale house here now, and the landscaping is basically back here behind the scale house.
Okay,
So there is a slight area here that I guess you could see from the street, but the majority of it is behind the scale house.
okay, and you guys moved the scale house, right? Because it used to be on the other side of that drive, wasn't it?
Well, there's an existing one. Sorry, Jim.
I guess is the chair's question, the existing one, or there was an original plan that perhaps may have shown the guard shack on the other side of the roadway of that driveway right there. Is that, I don't recall what version I guess went through.
Yeah,
Stormwater plans.
I guess that's what I'm just trying to figure out is what's actually different here from what was originally proposed.
So I think the major change actually is that the document set that was submitted for the original stormwater permit showed the limited disturbance, which now we're kind of increasing a little bit right behind the guard shack. And we went through that permit process with the planning board and received approval. But as you recall, almost 5 years ago now, we were also going through the state zoning process with the Department of Public Utilities. And during that process, it's a little bit vague, but I believe the town had inquired what potential screenings could be added at the site. And so the line of arborvitaes that originally were supposed to be removed, those were going to be removed because that scale was slightly rotated. It'd be kind of clockwise here and would have required their removal. As we progressed through the zoning process with the state, they had asked us if we could provide some screening. So we were going to add these new plantings where the arborvitaes were, and then we were going to add them along the backside of the guard shack here. And then also there's a row of them that are going up behind the current guard shack that's out on Wilson Street, kind of around the firewater pond there.
Okay.
So we'll be adding those. Those weren't a problem. But the issue was that the original, that screening, that was not added, the tie and bond drawing that was shown later, that was included in the state's order of conditions, I'll call it, to the zoning exemption. It was not originally part of, I don't believe, the stormwater, the set of documents used for the stormwater permit. And so we've committed to the state that we would add these based on the request from the town. But obviously, for us to install those, we need to expand the area of disturbance to allow for those plantings. Otherwise, they'd be right up against the fence. And we've got an issue with federal code that doesn't allow us to have plantings right up against the fence. Plus, from a security perspective and visual, obviously, there would be some concerns related to that. So that's why we're here, is primarily to kind of look to push out the area of disturbance. If the board wasn't to allow that, we'd, I guess, go back to the state and say, look, they don't want the plantings now. I suspect that's probably not the case, but that's why we're here today, is really to increase the area of disturbance, though fairly minor in our minds.
Okay.
It's for you to decide.
All right. So sorry, a couple more quick questions. So it looks like there's a hill behind there now. Does that hill change at all?
So Tim, I can kind of address this. So the hill and all the trees, so there's several hundred feet, if not more, of trees behind that will all remain. We do need to take some of that scrub brush out of there to be able to get the trees in there. But I think we're talking about taking back, is it 20 feet, Tim, or maybe at most 30 feet? But
I think it's less. Yep.
I think we grade it out, put some loom down, it'll get seeded, and then these trees will go in its place in that area. But the hill itself will essentially remain unchanged. Okay.
So the hill will remain unchanged. You're gonna have to remove some scrub, and you're gonna, what'd you say, about 30 feet? You're gonna have to remove?
I would think it'd be about 20.
Is that what it comes out to?
Yeah.
What we're looking for is to maintain about 10 to 15 feet from outside the fence line so that visually you can see, there's not somebody, kind of approaching the fence type of thing.
Yep, I get it.
Able to climb the tree and come over. So we need a little bit of buffer there. And then we need the room to actually physically plant the trees and let them get established if, they're not going to grow in that scrub brush. So we just need the room to kind of provide that little bit of buffer and then provide the room for the trees themselves to get planted.
Okay, so you're removing some scrub, call it about 20 feet, and you're removing are there any other trees or whatnot that you're removing in there?
I believe there's one mature tree that's in that area. If you went back to the street view, if you had it handy, Tim, there's kind of one mature tree that is fairly well overgrown, but I would consider to be a mature tree. It's kind of that one right there. The rest of that in there is primarily brush.
Okay. And then last question for me. You have a 15-foot of clearance around the rest of the perimeter fence on the property. I guess that's not a perimeter fence though.
No, we have two fences. We actually have a security fence and a perimeter fence. Outside of the security fence, which just is a security fence, we do maintain a cleared buffer. I'll say we strive for 20 feet. I think we often have to thin that down to 10 or 15 feet. I think in this case, we're probably down to the 10 to 15 feet. But I think there's a couple areas, I think like as part of the new project, there was an area with wetlands. So we kind of limited that so we didn't have to clear into that. So there are a couple areas where it's slightly less, but generally speaking, that's the case.
Okay. Mr. Gelsich, what can you just walk us through, you had a nice note of the memo, but can you just quickly describe to us what our options as a planning board are before us?
Yep. So many of you are probably familiar with this process. We went through it in November of last year for this project. Planning board can determine whether what's proposed now is a significant change from the, intent of the stormwater management permit. And so if those changes are significant, you can require Eversource to come back with a new application and basically amend the permit that was approved through a new application. You can also determine that the changes are insignificant, which is what we did for the tree cutting around the flare stack in November. And what that does is just, I'll write a letter saying that the work described in this meeting, the board is determined to make no significant impact to the stormwater system on site and affect the stormwater management permit, and then they can go on their merry way. And then the other option is that the board can determine that the changes are significant. However, they don't need a new stormwater management permit. And then we would just need the board to determine what the applicant would need to provide to move forward to address any concerns or satisfy the board in getting this work done.
Okay. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Questions or comments from the board? Fran.
Chair, Jim and Tim, do you have a more recent picture of the facility from the road view? What you had shown, the aerial view did a decent job, because I think what we're talking about here is the area behind the waist, the scale, correct? And the picture that was shown previously from the road view was before all the work was done. There's been a ton of work that you guys have done. And I think just having a visual of the current scenario would be helpful for the board members. So that's number one. And number two, because we are focused on stormwater management, by removing 20 or 30 feet of that brush to create that clearance, and maybe this is a question back for Beta, is just what impact potentially was that going to have on the stormwater? Because there is a slope there, I think, from south to north a little bit as it kind of approaches the road. So
I can say from a stormwater perspective, it's the runoff is going to be less just because we're vegetating a largely scrub growth barren area. So when we pull that material out, we're loaming and seeding and then putting in trees, which is basically cover over that as well. So if we were to model those two conditions side by side, what we're proposing would be a decrease in runoff because of the improvement to the cover type. As far as pictures.
Hey, Tim, 1 second. Just on that thought, and Phil, I know you haven't reviewed this on a formal basis, but does that general assessment from Tim make sense to you that the stormwater impact would be less with this proposed change? Or is that something that you believe would need to be studied in some capacity?
No, if it's accurately described in this meeting, we believe that there's no additional impervious surface and there's no major regrading of the area. And if you are adding more vegetation, the engineer is correct in saying that there will likely be less runoff.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Sorry, Tim. Just wanted to clarify that. And then the second question about photos.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through our project photos now to try to find one for you. I don't have one at the tip of my finger though.
It's a very reasonable request. I have a photo that shows the area to be cleared, but it's a little bit too close to kind of, I think if, I don't understand why I hadn't thought of this beforehand to have a photo from the street. I probably have something here, but I can't seem to put my fingers on it right now, but certainly it would clear a lot of these questions up, I think. But I don't have anything as we're talking that's handy.
Okay. Other questions? Ronnie, did you have a question or a comment?
Actually, the image that was being shown was the street view one that's from Google Earth, and I was going to ask a similar question that Fran did about a better view from the front. But while I have you, so I just want to confirm that the arborvitaes that are on the entrance of going into the property, that is planned to be left unchanged. Would that be correct?
Okay. That's correct. The original actual permit had those being removed. Yeah. We were able to make some design changes to leave them because they really are a very well established barrier there. So,
yeah. So everything that you presented makes logical sense to me, and the fact that there's going to be actually less runoff is even more appealing. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Other questions or comments? Paul.
How long do you think the removal and the plantings would take? And then kind of separately, how tall is the way station? So like just for adding for cover and hiding some of that stuff.
So the plantings that will be located behind, the plantings that are in question here, which are located behind the guard shack, they'll clear that out in I'll say a couple days, and then probably the following week they would come back and put the plantings in, maybe sculpt the grade there a little bit, and then I would say maybe a week later get the hydroseed. So probably all said and done, just because of timing of getting the subcontractors out there, it'll probably take 3 weeks. But the reality is you probably have maybe 5 days of actual work taking place over that time period. As far as the heights of them, the scale itself is ground level, so it's about 1.5 feet off the ground. The guard shack itself is, I think, 10 or 12 foot high, and then you'll have these plantings behind them. So these plantings don't actually create a visual break between the road and really any equipment behind them, because behind them is just another section of trees in that hill. They really were just to kind of get some additional plantings on property when we were going through the design phase. The plantings that are up closer to the road that are being added, those certainly will. Those are much larger trees. I think they're spruce or some fairly large species, and we do believe that that's going to make a fairly significant impact. Because right now, most people that drive by the front of the facility will recognize that there is a kind of a fire pond there, and there's a large rock outcropping. But besides that, there's really nothing that visually breaks or provides any screening from the road to at least the way station and the guard shack and the trucking area.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Just one.
Jane?
Sure. So, you may have addressed this, and I apologize for being late, but I'm wondering if you have a watering plan for all of these new plantings that you're going to be putting in. As you know, this is not an ideal time to be planting.
Yeah.
And
So-
is there a guarantee? Usually it's about a year.
So I guess, unlike probably some other applicants that, maybe plantings are part of the order of conditions, I think for us, if, we would want these to become established, we certainly benefit from the visual separation from folks passing by. This one doesn't provide that much behind the guard shack, but we also wouldn't want, dead and dying trees up against the property. We're fairly sensitive to, fire hazards and that type of thing. As far as a watering plan, we did some recent plantings on site, and we do have a contractor who's been maintaining those by watering them. We have water located right there at that guard shack, so we would certainly keep those irrigated to ensure that they take. So,
Thank you.
All right. Rob?
Thanks, Gary. Through the chair. So earlier on in this, as you were sharing screenshots and so on, the weigh station appeared on the right side of this right side of the driveway. Now what's constructed is a weigh station hut or house sort of thing, with the weigh station on the left side of the driveway. And is there any landscaping behind it today? Is the weigh station house physically constructed? Like if I go to Google Maps and look at a street view of 48 Wilson Street, I see a weigh station like scale on the right side of the driveway.
Okay, so that's the original weigh station. We've replaced that. That's been demoed now, and there's a new one that's been placed on the right adjacent and running parallel to it.
And parallel on the other side of so basically right next to it, but on the incoming, if you're incoming to the facility, it's on the left side.
That's correct.
And is the house or where people are gonna work out of that weigh station, is that constructed?
That's correct. That is constructed. So if you drove by today, you'll see what we'll call a guard shack that's right adjacent to the new weigh station. So that's built today. That construction is complete. There's no more construction in that area to be done. So you've got the new weigh, the new scale, and then the new guard shack is right beside it. But currently, there's no plantings or anything around it. It's just the natural vegetation behind it and the scrub brush.
Okay, and so the request is or for us to determine if it's a major site plan or minor, is just the front hedge of arborvitae seems to be higher and taller, and for all intents and purposes better than what was proposed as replacement plantings. So from my point of view, the only thing is the plantings around that guard shack. Is that a major site plan change or minor? Is my understanding correct?
I think that's, yes.
All right.
I mean,
Thanks.
I was going to say, just to add on to that, Rob, I mean, to me, based on the comments from both Tim and Phil, the stormwater impact is likely less. Visually, there doesn't appear to me to be any significant decrease in screening, and actually just based on the photos, it might actually look a little better when they're done. So I don't know, my thoughts or recommendation to the group would be actually that we determine this is not significant, at which point we can move forward with our planner, with Mr. Gilsich's option of issuing a letter stating such and allowing the applicant to undertake these alterations. That's my recommendation, but to the members of the board, what do you got? What are your reactions? What are your thoughts on that? We'll take a vote on it, but I just want to kind of get a gut check as to how people are feeling before we take a vote.
Through the chair, I agree with you.
Through the chair, I also concur.
Concur.
Agreed.
So then on that note, I will entertain a motion to determine that the proposed changes are not significant. And John, does the motion need to include anything other than that?
You may want to say that the determination for not a significant change includes the work proposed in the application, just so that there's like clarity as to what you're actually saying has no significance.
So I will entertain a motion that the planning board determines that the proposed changes are not significant and that the extent of the work is what is referenced in the materials provided to the board.
So moved. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Rob Benson, second.
Sorry, John, did you have something else? No?
No, you said it fine. I was just going to say, if you wanted some language in the memo, I have the language from the applicant that they put. The proposed changes to the approved project includes approximately 3,100 square feet extension of current limit of work consisting of the cutting of existing trees to provide space for additional screening plantings as required by the Department of Public Utilities in response to a request by the town of Hopkinton.
Perfect. I'll modify that as a friendly amendment.
Accepted.
Mary and Rob, does that work?
Yes, that's accepted. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Yes, I agree, Rob.
Any further discussion before we take a vote? And if not, we will do our roll call vote here. So we'll start with Mary.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Ron?
Ron Paper, yes.
Paul?
Paul Ostrander, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. So thank you, Jim and Tim. Appreciate the explanation. And we'll go ahead and put those that letter, those materials together. So
Great. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Next admin item, Franklin Road Solar Decommissioning Plan Review and Vote. And maybe we just quickly start, John, if you want to just quickly walk through what's in front of us. And do we have the applicant here?
Yes.
Chris Fournier from Agilitas Energy, and Mustafa is also here from Agilitas.
Okay. Well, in that case, and actually, you know what, I'm still going to start with John if that's okay. But John, do you want to just remind the board and the public as to just from a process perspective, what we're reviewing tonight, and then we can have the applicant just quickly explain where they're at.
Sure. So when the property was still owned by Seaboard Solar, they submitted a decommissioning plan. It was reviewed by Beta. Beta had comments. Now looking back, Seaboard was undergoing a sale to Agilitas, and they put the revision to the decommissioning plan on hold. So now Agilitas is coming back to us with a revised decommissioning plan, and the board needs to approve the decommissioning plan and the estimate for removal so that they can put together a bond that the town would be a named beneficiary of.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, John.
So sorry, not to confuse everybody, there is now also two other cost estimates that is a different agenda item that is not included in this one. So we will be talking about the landscape and stormwater estimates, which are separate performance guarantees. This is just the decommissioning bond.
But to your point, John, we should plan on determining the decommissioning bond value tonight.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So Chris or Mustafa, do you want to, I guess what I'm most interested in is why the changes to the original approved decommissioning plan and bond, and if you could just walk through those. And we've got Beta here that can provide any additional context on their review of your proposed amendments.
So when we acquired the project, we got the decommissioning plan prepared by the Seaboard, and there was an existing beta review on that. So we updated the plan, revised the numbers on that plan according to what Beta recommended. And then our plan was reviewed by Beta again. And right now we are all good to go. Right, John?
Okay. So Beta is supportive of the proposed changes to the decommissioning plan and the dollar amount. I see Phil nodding his head.
Yes.
Okay, great. We appreciate you working with Beta and working through this all ahead of time. That makes our job in the public forum a whole lot easier. So thank you.
Thank you as well.
John, are you able to just pull that up really quickly on the screen? And while he's doing that, are there any questions or comments from the board members on this?
So through the chair, I don't know if it would be helpful to look at the Beta letter that's also in here. The Beta letter is dated 7/22/22. So this decommissioning plan is 7/20/22. So Beta, their second letter reviews this one that you're seeing on the screen. All the comments in Beta's letter are issue resolved. So they have not updated the decommissioning plan from the one that they sent to Beta because Beta seems to be okay with this one.
Okay. I think this is fine. I just wanted to, two things. And I mean, we've already got confirmation from Beta that they're comfortable with this. I wanted to see if folks have additional questions. And then lastly, I just wanted to review what the total net change is from a cost perspective. I know there's some other details in it, but just for the bond purposes, just wanted to make sure we review that in detail. So I apologize that I am asking this question, but can you just remind us again, is the bond value, so the total present bond is 227,425. I guess I'm just wondering, maybe Mustafa or Chris, if you could just quickly walk through the financials here so that we understand what the revised bond would be.
The previous one that was prepared by Seaboard, the total present bond is something around 104K. And right now with this one, after Beta's reviews, we updated the numbers and the current one is going to be $227,000, 227,425. That's going to be the bond amount.
Okay, so you're increasing the bond.
Yep. Yes.
Great. All right. Questions or comments from the board? And I can't see everyone on the screen, so I'd encourage you to speak up if you do.
Through the chair, the only comment is based on, so as listed, is the value is 206,750. I believe you just said it's going to change to 221. Is that correct?
So couldn't hear you well. Can you
I apologize. My earphones aren't working either. So you a few seconds ago, I believe you said that the subtotal totaled was it 227 or 221? I apologize.
227.
So the total is 227 above the 10% contingent. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Fran.
So just a quick question for the applicant. It looks in the decommissioning plan that it's going to take between 5 and 6 weeks to get to do all the work. When do you plan to start the decommissioning project itself?
So
yeah,
the project should be in place for about 25 years. So at that time, we'd make an assessment as to whether we would like to continue using the land for a renewable energy generation, or if we plan to decommission the entire site, that would be when we started the decommissioning of the site.
Does that answer your question, Fran? I'm not quite following what you were asking either.
Yeah, it does. I guess the follow-up question that I have on that is, if you sell the business to another, I assume that this decommissioning plan would go along with that. What would happen if the organization was to go out of business? Who picks up the responsibility for the decommissioning?
Isn't that why we're providing the bond to the town?
Yeah, so through the chair, if I could answer this one.
Yes,
the decommissioning bond is so that should they go out of business or abandon the project, the town would get this money to then decommission the project.
Yeah, so we don't have anybody, it's just money we'd sit there and determine who would then take care of that with that money.
Yeah, so the town would essentially contract out somebody to remove it. And so that's why we build in the 10% contingency. That's why they use the Davis-Bacon wage rates, because that's what the town would be required to do. So the applicant, should they decommission, could do it for cheaper, but we have to do the estimate based on if the town were to do it, and that's why everything is a little bit higher.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, any further questions, comments? And if not, then I'm going to entertain. Yeah, go ahead.
What if inflation adjustment isn't 3%? It seems very static. In today's markets, it seems low. And over 25 years, I think it's tough to predict. It's obviously going to fluctuate. But there's definitely, go ahead.
We talked about this for the Wilson Street solar project as well. It's really tough to estimate the inflation. So I think Phil mentioned that they just kind of use the standard 3% because it could be lower than 3%, it could be more than 3%, but that's really all we can go off of. There's no way we can predict inflation over 25 years. So the 3% is generally pretty standard for these types of things, if I'm correct.
You are totally right, John. We agree with that.
Okay. If there aren't any further questions or comments, then I will entertain a motion to accept the revised decommissioning plan and bond calculation for the Franklin Road solar project.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Ron Krafer, second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Ron?
Ron Krafer, yes.
Paul?
Paul Ostrander, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. So that motion carries. And I think now we can move on to the landscaping and stormwater, but let's do the landscaping first. I think, John, is there any these probably cleanest to do these separately, yes? Or are these rolled into one?
No, they should be separate. They are two different conditions, so two different performance guarantees.
Yes.
That's how we kind of had it in the decision.
Okay. So again, I guess following a similar line of thinking, if the applicant can just walk through the changes from the original estimates that were done.
We got several quotes from landscapers about the landscaping cost estimates based on the landscaping plan approved by the town. And this is the number 123,060 is the number we came up. And this number, this landscaping detailed cost estimate was reviewed by Beta. And today, Beta shared their comments with it, and they came up with another number based on their estimates, which is 980. So from our point of view, both are estimates, so we rely on our values, but at this point, we would like to accept what the beta recommended, and the bond can be issued with the number beta provided.
Okay, and beta was 149.
980.
That breaks out as 104,580 for plants and also includes 25,000 for maintenance and watering. Yep, that's the letter. Thank you.
Okay, and I just had two questions on that. First was the equipment charge or the equipment cost in that. Can you just explain to us what that is? And then in my second question, I'll just ask both, but you have 3 months of watering and maintenance. Is 3 months of watering and maintenance sufficient? I know there's a pretty long performance guarantee on this landscaping.
So I'm not a landscape expert, but I'm relying on our subcontractor who is a landscape expert, and they assured us that 3 months would be enough. If necessary, we can do more. Our estimate came out to roughly the same as Beta's suggestion here. So I would think that with Beta's expertise and with our landscaping contractor's expertise, that 3 months should be sufficient. Phil, if you have a different comment, I would be happy to hear it, but I think that's what we're planning on currently.
Okay, and I'm assuming you would be, if I recall, I don't remember the exact details, but you would be planting in either the spring or the fall, correct?
Yes, during the 2 growing windows.
Yeah.
As far as the equipment, that's just going to be to get the water to the plantings and also to get the plantings into place so that they may be installed.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? I appreciate the applicant working with Beta here. If there aren't any questions, then I will entertain a motion to accept the proposed landscaping cost and bond estimate for a total of $149,980.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Ron Prefer, second.
And assuming no further discussion, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes. My apologies.
That's okay. Ron?
Ron Prefer, yes.
Paul?
Paul Ostrander, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody. I'm not going off my cheat sheet here, so. Okay, so that motion carries. And let's move on to the stormwater. So again, if the applicant can just quickly walk through where they're at and what changes they've made or what where they're at with regards to Beta's estimate and what changes, if any, have been made.
So we got stormwater maintenance cost estimate from our subcontractors, and the amount we came up is $13,500. And Beta reviewed this cost estimate, and they found it totally reasonable. The only thing that Beta came up with is for us to provide the cost of the construction for the stormwater management system, the entire stormwater management system cost, which is a condition of the special permit. So, which we shared with John within today at the end of today. So I can share that number as well. $967,000 is going to be the stormwater management system construction cost estimate. but the number that is going to be approved in here is the $13,500, which is
Okay.
maintenance.
So just to make sure I heard that right, the maintenance costs and the bond would be for 13,500.
Yes.
But the recommendation is that we also note the total cost of the stormwater management system being $967,000.
Yes.
Through the chair, that's not correct.
Okay.
So, let me just pull up. Beta had it written. Right. So in the condition for the special permit, it does say that they need to submit a detailed estimate of the cost of construction of the stormwater infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you, John. But do we need more than what they've provided us?
So no, I guess to your point, yeah. So yes, what you said was correct. So I take that back. I was not correct. They need to provide a bond for the maintenance, but they did not provide a detailed estimate of the construction. So I guess the decision that needs to be made by the board is this $967,000, which isn't backed up with an enumerated listing of what those services is going to cost, satisfies this condition, or do they need to provide something that will satisfy that and then do the bond for the amount of maintenance?
Yeah, and I guess the question is, does the cost of construction, is that detailed cost of construction needed in order to determine the appropriate bond amount? And what I'm gathering is that the maintenance is the primary determinant of the bond amount, not the cost of construction. So I'm gonna
interpret it also.
We can share the details of the cost of construction on the following days.
I can give you an overview right now, but I don't have it in a formal format to provide to the board at this moment.
All right, so let's do this. In general, is the board comfortable with the bond amount being based on the maintenance costs?
Yes.
And I'm just trying to think through what risks there might be of only basing the bond on the maintenance costs. But
Through the chair.
Yeah, Mary, go ahead.
There in the condition, it does say that it shall be based on the future maintenance costs. So the escrow would be for the maintenance. So,
yep.
But I do have a question related to that, and that is that the amount that you showed of 13,500, I noticed that some of that was annual, or specifically the line items mentioned annual, and I wondered if the entire amount is an annual cost expected for maintenance. Quarterly inspections, semi-annual mow, clean out, regrade, and reseed, annual riprap, swales maintenance, etc. Okay, so it is annual, right?
Yeah, it looks like they've, on the semi-annual stuff, they've taken the costs and then applied it based on the number of times per year.
Yep. So it would be 5 years according to the condition, and then 25% of that. So 13,500 times 5 times 25%. Is that correct, John? According to the way the condition is written? You just put yourself back on mute, John.
That sounds correct. Thank you. That sounds correct to me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sorry. So just to clarify, so 13,500 times 5 for 5 years.
Yep.
Times 25%, which would
Yep.
mean the bond amount would actually be
$16,875.
Thank you.
okay. Any further questions, or I guess I based on how the condition is written, I'm comfortable with this as is, and I appreciate Chris's offer to walk through the cost estimate, but I'm not sure that's necessary.
Through the chair, again, my understanding of what this is meant to be is in case the site is abandoned or they go bankrupt. So the maintenance is what we should be looking at, not the construction. So therefore, I'm totally okay with this.
Yep. All right. So on that note, and if anyone feels otherwise, please feel free to speak up. I will entertain a motion to accept the stormwater bond amount as proposed of $16,875.
So moved. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Second, Ron Creeper.
Any further discussion? Yes, John.
Have we gotten a confirmation from the applicant just to dot all our I's and cross all our T's that 16,875 is okay? I don't want to vote and then have them contend.
We are okay with that.
Okay.
We accept.
All right. We'll move to the roll call vote. Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Fran Dean, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Ron?
Ron Creeper, yes.
Paul?
Paul Ostrander, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes as well. All right. Well, to the applicant, to Mustafa and Chris, thank you. Appreciate your willingness to work offline. I guess it helps our process. And good luck with the project.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to get through one more admin item, and then we'll save the meeting minutes for the end. So we've got the last administrative item one is an endorsement of subdivision plans for Connolly Farm. And I see Mr. Nation is on. John, do you want to just walk through why this is before us, and then we can turn it over to Chris if he has any additional comments.
Yep. So it's kind of standard procedure with any subdivision. They get approved, they get the subdivision approval, then they make the revisions to the plans, then they have to get the plans endorsed and registered, recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So that's the step they're at right now. They've revised the plans. Beta has reviewed them, said that they have addressed all of Beta's comments in the plans. So these should be the final plans for approval. And the board just needs to vote to endorse the Mylars. And the Mylars are the lotting plans, just the first couple sheets in the plan set.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the recap. Chris, any additional comments to add?
No, I have no comments. I just wanted to be here in case something came up, but
Okay.
I think John covers it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board before we take a vote? And seeing none, I will entertain a motion to endorse the plans for Connolly Farm OSL PD.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Ron Creeper, second.
And if there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote, starting with Mary.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Fran Dean, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Ron?
Ron Creeper, yes.
Paul?
Paul Ostrander, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes as well. So thanks, Chris. Appreciate you on. Appreciate you being on. Oh, John.
Can you all please come in and sign these plans?
How many do you need, John?
5.
We're all coming in.
And your hours tomorrow are?
We are open from 8 to 7. Wednesday is 8 to 4:30. Thursday is 8 to 4:30. Friday is 8 to 2.
John, is there anything that I need to sign as a chair? Because I will not be in Massachusetts for a little while.
I don't, Chris. You could probably tell the answer to this. There's no line specifically for the chair, is there? It's just 5 members on the signature block.
Oh boy, I don't have it in front of me.
I don't think there's a requirement.
Chair specific.
Yeah, I don't think the chair needs to sign. I think they usually do sign, but if that's an issue, then we'll have to figure it out.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you all. Chris, one quick thing. I drove up Whisper Way the other day and it looks really nice up there. I appreciate the tree plantings and general care of the site, and just wanted to pass that along, that I think you guys did a nice job up there. So unrelated to this one, but since you're on it, just thought I'd pass that perspective along.
Through the chair.
Great, appreciate that.
I'd just like to comment that I think their road sign to Whisper Way entering is really unique and lovely. I think it's really nice.
It's a work in progress up there, and hopefully it'll just get better and better. And my brother and dad, spend a lot of time up there as well. So it's a real family effort. We put our heart and soul into everything we do.
Congratulations. Very good.
All right. Let's, like I said, we'll hold off on the minutes till the end, but let's move to our lone public hearing tonight. And at this point, I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing for 83 East Main Street.
So moved. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Second.
All right. So, no further discussion. We'll vote on opening the hearing. Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Ron?
Ron Fraser, yes.
Paul?
Paul Ostrander, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. And let's see who we have here. I see Mr. McDowell. Yes. Who from the applicant side would like to introduce this project to us this evening?
If I could, Roy McDowell. So this evening we have myself, Roy McDowell, representing Legacy Farms LLC, Phil Ottaviani representing Chubb Road LLC, and we have Eric Swenson with Legacy. If John could open up the access to the screen for Eric, we'll run through some plans.
Oh, I think so.
How's that look?
We can see it.
All right.
Yep. That looks great. So you all know this location. This is the corner of East Main Street and Legacy North and South. The old White House with the aqua color shutters. I spent a lot of time working with the Historical Commission, debating what to do with this house. And we have an agreement with them that given its decay of the sills, foundation, etc., that we've agreed that we will take this house down and replicate it on the exterior exactly as it is or was originally. And we've submitted plans. I think we have them tonight to the Historic Commission. We're doing a survey for the Historic Commission. And prior to taking the house down, we get approval of all the details on the plans. And we've also had to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals because it's a pre-existing condition that doesn't have sufficient frontage to the street. And the Historic Commission wanted the house to stay in the exact same spot. So we did go to the Board of Appeals about a week or so ago, and they approved the our variance, or actually our special permit, to take this house down and put it back in the same location. At the same time, we're here this evening with 3 over 55 condominiums. You'll see the roof lines here you can see the 3 two-car garages and a driveway entrance. We could go to you'll also notice some screening trees along the perimeter of the back of the property facing the Mezet property. Next, please. This is an interior view of the 3 units. You'll see 3 garages in the general layout of the interior of the units. Next, please. This is the second floor. No bedrooms on the second floor, just on the first. Next, please. This is a frontal view of the 3 units. You can see the 3 garages, the dormers, side view. And can we show a rear view, Eric? This is a rear view. You can see the doors going out to some steps, then down to a lower level terrace. Next, please. Just to give you some sense, we're talking about some white trim, some very light colored gray tones, something very much in keeping with other things you've seen in the area. Next, please. Again, a frontal view with some color tone. Next. this is the antique house that's there currently. We had an architect come out and measure the dimension of all the windows, the cornices, the roof lines, everything. And this is an exact replication of what that would look like. And this we submitted to the Historic Commission. Next, please. Now we're going to go through these plans. These plans have been reviewed by Phil from Beta, and there was a lengthy list which I have at the end of this. And you'll see, once we get through these plans, you'll see the updated plans as of today and answers to the questions on Phil's list.
These actually are the updated plans. So we're going to go through the updated plans and then the list.
Oh, okay. So you changed them.
Yeah, I took out the old ones. They weren't relevant for the.
Okay. So you'll see we created an easement on the far right side of the site in case, for whatever reason, one needs to get in and do some work on that basin that currently exists. So that'll remain an open zone with an easement. You'll notice the three driveway entrances, the one driveway entrance coming into three garage entrances. There's quite a bit of detailing with drainage, with grading, sewer lines, water lines. When we built Legacy North, we purposely tapped sewer, water, and gas lines into the site from the street. So they're actually already tapped on the side of the Legacy North side of the site. And this is showing the relationship between the existing house and the three new units in one building. Next, please. This is a planting plan. It's showing you where the planting will be around the perimeter of the buildings. Again, the Leyland cypress, I believe they are on the rear side, which will grow to be quite tall over time. Next, please. Just some details of what's required for the various components of the project. Next, please. Again, spec details. Next. Okay, now this is Beta's letter, and these are the answers. I believe our engineer has spoken to Phil earlier today, and you'll notice that I think we've covered all the points. The one point that's not covered here, and I sent John an email earlier today from Tom Poirier from the fire department saying that he does have sufficient and adequate fire emergency access to the site. We can go through these or you can just look at them, but basically all the details that Phil wanted, whether it be the handicapped, drainage, lighting, perimeter, siltation during construction. Could we go to the next one, please? Again, spot grades, the post-development, the easement that we talked about. I believe we've covered all the points. Anything else, Eric?
That was the last page. That's it.
Okay, so that's everything. We're more than happy, whether it be Phil or myself, to answer any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Roy. We do have a public hearing outline that we'll use here. So I'm going to hold off on questions or comments quite yet until we get into a little bit more detail. But our next item on the outline is staff report. So John, do you want to walk through the staff report?
Sure. So as Mr. McDowell said, they are proposing 4 units. One of them is considered an existing unit. That is the standalone single family home. So they're really proposing 3 new units, and those are coming from the 5 additional units. So let me back up. Legacy Farms as a whole has a certain number of units that they can do as a maximum. The Trails was approved for 180 units. They are only now building 175. So there are 5 extra units that were allowed in Legacy Farms. They're taking 3 of those 5 units and putting them on this parcel. So they're still within the maximum number of units for Legacy Farms. Number of approved units, even for age restricted. It is in the WRPOD district. However, it's in the WRPOD -1 district, which allows for exemption of residential uses for a special permit from the ZBA. So that was a point of one of Beta's earlier reviews that they called that out. But we cleared that up. And then this site plan review is really focused on everything but the standalone single-family house. So that is exempt from site plan. So you're looking at the multifamily 3-unit development and the landscaping, traffic access, pedestrian access elements of the rest of the site. The facade, layout, all that stuff that pertains to the standalone single family house is outside of the purview of the planning board in this regard. We've got some comments from the health department and the fire department. I think Mr. McDowell addressed the fire department. They are going to sprinkler all the units. That was the biggest concern of the fire department. There is some concern with the health department. I don't know if Mr. McDowell or Phil, if you've addressed these, but they did make the comment of the treatment plan is permitted by the Massachusetts DEP, not the health department. So no additional flows are permitted without Massachusetts DEP approval. So I don't know where you are in that process. I don't think it necessarily affects the planning board's process, but that's something that I think the planning board would be interested to hear about.
I can get you a letter. I can get you a letter from our engineer, but we're well below the amount of gallonage that we're allowed to have. Probably at this point less than half, I believe. So adding these 3 or 4 units would be extremely de minimis in terms of any additional gallonage.
Is that an approval from Mass DEP, or is that just the opinion of the engineer?
Well, we don't need approval from DEP as long as we stay under a gallons. DEP really doesn't have a number, it's gallons. And I mean, I can get you something from our engineer that states all that, but it's really not a criteria that DEP is going to delve into, I don't believe.
Okay.
But I can get you something.
That's all I have.
And then just one last thing on the fire department comments, and I think that there was some clarification today that came through as well. And that's just confirming that the units would be sprinklered.
Correct. That's a requirement at Legacy Farms.
All right.
Through the chair, just
Yes,
to kind of put this one to bed. So I'll just read the points from Tom's email. He said the proposal meets fire department access requirements per 527 CMR 1, Massachusetts Comprehensive Fire Safety Code. Proposal meets fire department access requirements for the town of Hopkinton driveway access policy. And the proposal does not indicate the single family home having fire sprinklers installed, which was agreed upon during our 6/7/22 Google Meet. Please ensure this detail is added moving forward with the site plan review. And Roy sent a response to that saying, yes, all buildings will have sprinklers. And Tom confirmed receiving that.
Okay. All right. So, question for the group. Site walk. And I guess I'm curious if folks feel like we need a site walk here. I will say, because I already asked, we will not be able to go in the existing building. So I think that for the most part, what you see is what you get if you were to drive by, but love to hear from the board. Is the site walk in order here? Do we want to do one?
Through the chair, my opinion is no, since it wouldn't provide any additional information, and Google Earth provides more than enough. I have additional questions for the applicant, but I'm not necessarily think a sidewalk would help.
We'll get to questions in a little bit. Fran? You're muted, Fran. Fran,
Sorry,
you're muted.
first time I ever did that. If you're asking, I actually like site walks. I understand we can't go in the historical structure, that's fine. But I think I'm sure the developer has marked out and mapped out different lines that are there. I would like to kind of be able to ask questions. I find it valuable. I would be for it.
Jane?
I would also be curious about screening between the proposed condominiums and the neighbors. So a site walk might answer some of those questions.
All right. So let's go ahead and schedule a site walk. I would agree. I'm curious to see it'll help to visualize how this fits in with the greater landscape, how the landscaping plan fits in, where things are going to be set, where things are going to be located on the property. And to the points already mentioned, sometimes you get a different perspective in person than you do from the maps. So we normally do sidewalks on Saturday mornings. And just looking at the schedule here, we could do it as soon as this Saturday. Our next meeting is not until August 29th, so we could also do it on Saturday. So I guess we have two options. We could either do it on the, do my calendar here.
13, 20, or 27.
Yeah, 13th, 20th, or 27th. Thank you.
I can do it this Saturday. What about you, Phil?
I'm having that stem cell on my knee on Friday, and they say I'm going to be on crutches for 4 days because they're doing the, it's a 4-hour procedure and they put me under. So I don't know how you can handle it. I'm sure better than I could, but Saturday I'm going to be out of commission. The thing is they're doing it at noontime on Friday.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable with my doing it?
I have no problem with you doing it at all.
Okay.
The plans speak for themselves for all the landscaping plan that's been drawn up and the layout. Pretty easy enough to figure out where the three families going. So if you're okay with it and the board's okay, I have to have this thing. I've been home for 2 days. I can't move.
Okay. So through the chair. So I understand when we meet out there on Saturday, what is your expectation? Do you want me to stake the four corners of the building or just talk to you generally where it is?
If you could stake it, that'd be great, but I also don't want to create a lot of additional unnecessary work for you. So maybe it's not maybe it doesn't need to be formally staked, but some marking, some ability to visually describe where it's going.
Maybe we can spray the four corners.
The four corners and maybe the driveway.
Okay.
I think that'd be helpful.
All right. So what time Saturday is good?
Well, let's just go back to the board real quick. I know for me, I will not be there. As I am not in the state right now, but for other members of the board, does this Saturday work?
This Saturday, the 13th and the 27th are bad for me. The 20th is a possibility. 13th, they already have stuff planned ahead for that to happen.
I'll be out of town on the 13th.
Okay, so it's three of us out on the 13th. Roy, is there an option for the 20th? It sounds like the 20th might be a little bit better.
Yeah, 20th is fine.
Members of the board, is the 20th okay? You can nod your heads. All right.
Me.
And is 8 a.m. okay? I know.
Better.
I prefer 8 a.m. as opposed to later.
Yeah.
Whatever time you want.
All right. Let's plan on 8 a.m. on August 20th.
Great. Thank you.
It's a plan.
Okay. So let me just quickly walk through and remind folks of the decision criteria, and then we can get into some more detailed discussion. We'll probably start with Beta's review, but the planning board shall be reviewing this and approving it if it finds that the site plan complies with the master plan special permit. Number 2, the site plan meets all the requirements and standards set forth in this article, the master plan special permit, and applicable design guidelines. 3, the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the development project and in relation to adjacent areas and public ways is ensured. 4, that substantial adverse potential impacts of the development project have been adequately mitigated. And 5, that adequate mitigation has been provided with respect to any conditions impacting on-site safety, whether such conditions are created on-site or off parking. So I think what I'd like to do tonight is we'll begin by having Beta go through their review, and in particular, any particularly major considerations or areas where there's still a differing or there's non-alignment between the applicant and Beta's review. Second, we'll go through planning board member comments and questions. And then the third piece is we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. This is a public hearing, and I want to make sure that folks have a chance to share their thoughts as well. And I think from a timing perspective, that's probably pretty realistic for what we're going to get through tonight. Sound okay?
Yes.
Heads. All right. So Phil, do you want to walk us through your review of this project?
Sure. Contrary to Roy's statement, well, actually, there weren't very many comments. We received revised plans and a response to comments letter. I think the response to comments letter referred to other documents that were going to be provided, which were not included in the submission. So generally, the responses are in line with what we would expect. And I did have a discussion with their engineer this afternoon to discuss a few of the issues related to stormwater. But in general, SP1, they moved the water line, so there's no conflict. Added a handicap ramp, SP2, the site distance was added to the plans. They did state that there's no site lighting, but did indicate that there's typical doorway wall pack lights. So I think that's up to the board whether they need that lighting information. There was discussion about the fire department correspondence, SP5. They indicate that there's going to be mechanical equipment behind the building and not visible to the street. SP6, SP7 is, they indicate that there's going to be trash is going to be stored inside garages and a weekly vendor to remove. SW1, I have to review that one. They provided an easement, SW2, 20 feet wide along that, where the existing infiltration basin is, for Legacy Farms Road North. They indicate that they're gonna provide calculations. However, no calculations were provided with submittal. I assume that's coming. Test pits weren't provided. We recommend that an agent for the town observe the excavations for infiltration to confirm the design assumptions, which is a typical condition. Spot grades were added and slightly graded to direct runoff to infiltration trenches, which are stone trenches around the down gradient sides of the pavement areas. That was confirmed to be done. They did have the first set of plans had a stone trench all the way around all the impervious area, all the pavement areas. We thought it might be best to concentrate the ones and make them the stone trenches slightly larger on the down gradient side of the pavement areas that will accommodate the majority of the runoff. They have done that. They've installed the clay dams, SW7. All right, and somehow I went back to renumbering, but SW, I did have a discussion with the engineer this afternoon about SW1 and 80% TSS removal. I agree with the fact that it's difficult to put in pre-treatment devices. He said he's gonna update the operation and maintenance plan. However, that was not provided with the submission.
Hey Phil.
Yep.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second? I think kind of what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of details for the and additional information and modifications that the applicant is going to need to make in order to align with your recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean,
and I'm just thinking that maybe rather than go through all of them in detail now,
Okay.
we'll make that a homework assignment for the applicant. And like always, my hope is that most of this can be resolved offline. And if there are points of differing opinions of which the board needs to make a decision, then we can review those at our next meeting. Sound reasonable?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and open up to the board. I've been making a few notes and I have some thoughts, but I'll save those and let someone else speak first. Questions or comments from the board with regards to the project?
Through the chair, if I may, I was wondering, could an image of what it's going to the exterior look like be shown again? Because I saw something and I was just curious about it.
Are you looking for the elevation, Ronnie?
From the East Main Street, what it would look like from the road.
Okay.
Eric, could you pull up the images again?
Okay, so am I understanding? So I'm understanding this correctly or not? That there are 4 car garage per single unit, so 12 cars for 3 units.
No, those are 2 cars each.
Okay, so it's 2 cars per unit, so 6 car garages total.
Correct.
Thank you, because I'm looking at it like there's no way mathematically I'm seeing this right. Okay.
No, you're right.
Okay, so that was my first question. And secondly, could you show the rendering from how much of a driveway that would lead up to that? It's like the aerial shot. Okay. And is there enough room for turnaround on the far right? Because I'm looking at the right versus the left.
Yes, that's what a little dog leg is for.
Okay. Now, is it allowable, in your opinion, for in the future, for someone to have a third car, whether it's a resident or parked there because someone's staying over or something like that? Is there room opposed to parking on the street?
No, well, first off, if you have 3 cars, you would put 2 in the garage and 1 or 2 in the driveway. So each unit has enough parking for 4 cars.
Okay. Okay. So that was my first question. And what are last question I have before I have, I'm going to save some for others later. What is the square footage per unit?
I don't have that in front of me. Phil, do you remember what that is?
Yeah,
like
I think it's approximately 2,200 a unit, very similar to the trails.
2,200 units.
Yeah.
And they're all the same size, just different layouts.
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. And then I think Roy spoke earlier, but they are all 2-bedroom units. These 3 are. There's a bedroom and a loft on the second floor. There's a master on the first floor, I believe.
And are these designed for certain age demographic, or is this for all?
No,
they're actually restricted. They're age restricted of 55 or over.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I had a question to the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Fran.
So, Roy, are these units connected at all in any way, shape, or form to the trails?
No connection at all. Just we happen to have 5 units, and Bill would be building these.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so. I just wanted to be clear on that. And will it be your group that's going to be taking down the existing historic structure?
Mr. Ottaviani would be doing that.
Got it. And is there any thought, or are they going to repurpose any of the wood or materials from the historical structure at all?
So that's an excellent question, because what we're doing is we're hiring a historical architectural survey of the interior of the building. I was in there with the architect last week, And for instance, there's an interesting newel post in there. There's some really nice beams. And the idea is when the building's being taken down, to save some of those things, whether they're used in another historical structure in town or conceivably using them in some manner, shape, or form in the new building. So the answer to your question is yes.
You're thinking along the same lines. It would be kind of neat and outside of our purview, but need to incorporate some of that material, just as your thoughts. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm glad you're thinking about it anyway. Thank you.
All right. Who wants to go next?
To the chair?
To the chair. Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, just a quick question. I'm wondering, probably from John, what are the rules right now about age-restricted developments?
How do you mean?
I mean, because we've seen some come before us before and them not being able to go forward with age restriction. So I'm confused about the rules and when they apply, and maybe it was for different parts of legacy farms or something like that. I'm not sure.
Are you talking about the issue with the trails?
Perhaps it was that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was some question as to how enforceable age-restricted units are. And
so that wasn't the issue with the trails. The issue with the trails was they were required to provide affordable units on site.
Oh, right.
And they couldn't, because you can't have affordable units be age restricted. So what we changed in the zoning is that they were then allowed to do a payment in lieu for the affordable units.
Okay.
So
And then
this would not trigger more affordable units. However, there is a discussion that needs to be had, because the trails was approved for 180 units. They knocked it down to 175, so they didn't have to provide that 18th unit. However, now if these 5 units are used elsewhere within Legacy Farms, will that trigger another affordable housing payment? But at this point, we're only at 3, so it wouldn't trigger it there. It's only if the other 2 units would be developed that we would have a conversation about that.
Okay.
We agree with that analysis, John.
But Gary, so that answers my question. But Gary, you had that kind of follow on of how realistic is enforcement of age restriction?
So age restriction, to my knowledge, could be done as a deed restriction. And I'm sure it's part of like an HOA. I don't know if these are going to be part of Legacy Farms North HOA or Legacy Farms South HOA, or you said they're not going to be tied to the trails, so it's not going to be the trails HOA, but
have its own
enforced. It's going to have its own HOA.
Yes.
It will be enforced, I would assume, through the HOA documents.
All units will be included.
All units, including the historical.
Yes, absolutely correct. All 4 will be in the HOA, and the single isn't age restricted, but the triples are.
As Gary brought up a very good point, this is going to be deed restricted. It isn't like you can change your mind down the road. When you go to sell it, it's deed restricted to 55 or over.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next?
Through the chair.
Yep, go ahead, Jane.
So on the single standalone historical redo that you're going to be doing, it could be that it's on another plan, but I don't see it here. Is there a garage and a deck as the others have, or is
there is no garage?
No garage and no deck.
No.
And Jane, I do think it's worth noting that that structure is not part of our review here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Did not realize that.
Rob or Paul? Questions, comments?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, through the chair. I think this is a question maybe for John or Gary. Maybe you can help. What is our so this is the first time a situation like this is in my time on the board has come before us, where there's a historic home that's in disrepair. We're going to get it rebuilt, and then part of the existing property is going to be developed into multi-family dwelling unit. It just doesn't seem right on its face. So I don't know what we can do as a planning board, but it just doesn't seem right to me. So I'm struggling with what questions to ask because I don't know what we can do, if anything.
Through the chair, could I take a stab at that?
Sure, Roy.
So I can understand why you're questioning it, but if you go into the village center zoning and through the Osmood and Mass Plan special permit, this particular parcel, as is Western Nurseries, as is a parcel we have down the street, that's actually a different parcel, but the Western Nurseries parcel and this parcel is in the village center zoning district. And there's a whole laundry list of things we could do here. We could actually keep that house. We could do commercial, we could do retail, we could do a office building, we could do housing. There's a whole laundry list of things that could be done here. We could do 3,000, 4,000, maybe even 5,000 square feet of retail here. We could do things like that. And one of the items on that list, if you look at village center zoning, in fact, an approved use by right is housing, multifamily housing, retail, office, medical. So there's a whole laundry list. So this does fall into the purview of an allowed use.
So just to kind of paraphrase Roy, is that in your eyes, the residential application is the most appropriate / most profitable use of the parcel.
Well, I'm not saying it's the most profitable. We just feel it harmonizes. It's a relatively speaking small parcel, and we might do retail down the street. But when we look at this, it seemed in my mind a little odd to have a house and all of a sudden a commercial building right next to it. This seemed to be, to me, more harmonious with the neighborhood.
Okay. Rob, does that answer your question? Or we can, Don can give us some more clarity. I have some opinions on it that I'll share in a second, but.
So can I just ask one more thing through the chair? So everywhere else in town, all of our everything that's in a historic district is by the property boundaries. That home that sits on that's in a historic home, the property is within a historic district. And where it's different here, that's not true.
Well, this property is not in a historic district.
Though that's what I'm saying. So this is different because it's part of the Osmood. So we have no real, it's different rules than a house that would be in our historic district in downtown, for example.
Yes, correct. And just so you know, and I'm not going to pretend to explain this perfectly, although John can probably correct me otherwise. There are certain protections for structures that are in a historic district. In order to tear down a building that is over a certain age, even if it is not in a historic district, the applicant still has to go in front of the historic commission in order to get approval for that. So basically the idea is that if it's in the historic district, it has a lot of protections built around it because there's a group or a cluster and there's generally historic significance there. If it's outside of a historic district, then there becomes a question of just because it's old doesn't necessarily mean it's historic. And that's where the historic commission, I might be getting the group wrong, but they actually are reviewing that to determine if there is some historic relevance and what might be done moving forward. So to your point, it is a different process than something that's in a historic district.
Okay.
And I'll just I have a couple of questions that I'll just share my thoughts. I think that's partially why I'm interested in doing a site walk, is that I feel like this site is kind of this kind of exposed piece of land that's just kind of, I'm struggling to see exactly how kind of what feels like a kind of random 3-family structure, how that fits in. And I realize, to your point, Roy, that this is allowable by our bylaws. But I'm having a hard time visualizing. And I hear your point that because the existing building is residential, that maybe it does make sense to do something residential here as well. But I'm struggling a little bit with kind of how this all fits in. I have a couple of questions for you, and I guess one of them is just around, and you've got landscaping on the back side and on the Legacy North side. But I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on kind of how you can incorporate this new structure into the site and into the landscape so that it doesn't sort of feel like just a new construction, 3-family is just kind of plopped down because there was nothing better to put there. And I'd love to get your perspective on other things that you might be able to do to help blend it in and make it feel like it's been there a long time, and make it feel like, you know, like the land or the landscaping has grown around it.
Well, you bring up a couple of very good points. One of which is we need to give you a better rendering of what it looks like from the street, probably with the other house in the same picture. So if you were standing right on the sidewalk or in the street, what does it look like? We'll have that prepared for the next meeting. And we'll also take a look at this from an elevational point of view and see if we can do some better enhancements in terms of the visuals of what the landscaping would look like. As we all know, and I spent half of my life in the landscape business, a building can look so much nicer when it's well landscaped. It feels anchored, it softens the architecture, it gives color, it gives texture. And I appreciate all those things. That's, one of the reasons why we put those trees along the perimeter of the rear, is over time, those will grow into be a full hedge and give privacy to both sides of that property, which I think is important. And I think at the same time, it needs to, and you're right, it needs to feel anchored from the street. You don't want to drive by and have it look like it just dropped out of the sky. So I get that totally. And hopefully when we meet out the site, we give you a little more definitive elevation plans. We can all get on the same page, just making it feel like it belongs.
Okay. And I think just to echo, and Rob's always really good about this, is, at the end of the day, we need to review and oftentimes approve these things, but we want it to feel like something that belongs, that makes Hopkinton a better community. And, I think just looking at the plot plan here, it just feels a little funky to have a small 3-bedroom kind of dropped in next to this historic house that's, up very close to the road. And, I think that your additional efforts on elevation and landscaping and how that can fit in, I think that'll help us.
Well, let me try, when we meet next time, and maybe when we meet on the site, I'll try and have more definitive plans with better viewscapes for you when we meet.
Okay. That'd be great. Secondly, just going back to the garages, what are the dimensions of the garages?
You mean the depth or the width?
Both.
That's 2 cars, so I'm guessing that's, Phil, is that 20 feet? I can't read the screen.
I can't read it either.
It's either 18 or 20 feet wide. It's enough to get 2 cars in.
I guess it depends on what kind of car.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but an average.
My architect will tell me that 22 is the minimum and 24 is desired. But I guess where I'm going with this, and I realize that very common for developers to put smaller garages in, but if the expectation is to put 2 cars and 2 trash cans for recycling and waste into a garage that's reasonably small, and they look closer to 16 by 16-ish. I mean, they look pretty.
We'll get that information for you.
Okay.
Actually, I can't tell from here. We'll find that out.
All right.
It looks to be 19 feet 6 inches.
19.6. Okay.
19.6.
It's 19.6 wide by 20 plus deep.
Okay. All right. And again, I'm just cautious of the fact that there, aside from the driveway spots in front, there is no other visitor parking. People have a family gathering. I'm not really even sure where in the vicinity they could park if they wanted to, because this neighborhood is kind of it's a little bit street locked in a sense. And then my last question, just on that note, is that, again, while this doesn't apply to the single family house, the single family house doesn't have a garage, so that it only has 2 spots in front of it. And I'm just thinking of a family, or, again, they're likely going to have 2 cars and they have a visitor. Where does that visitor park? So I just in general, I'm just a little nervous, and they're not, it's not like there's a street they can park on. There's not a lot of options elsewhere. And, for 4 houses here to not have really any visitor spots of any kind is concerning for me.
Just to note, I believe the historical house has 3 spots.
3. Okay. All right.
Through the chair, one last comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob, and then Ron, we'll go to you after Rob's comment.
Yeah. So all the way from like kind of Clinton Street or Western Nurseries, this house and this property will be basically the only homes on that section of East Main Street until you get down the hill, and basically at the bottom of the hill, after there's that kind of the what passes under the road for Eversource. There's going to be no houses besides this house and this proposed structure for about a mile. So it definitely, and it's at the top of the hill, so people are going to notice it. It's not going to go unnoticed, is I think my larger point.
Well, again, I think if it's landscaped properly, there's no reason not to notice it.
Hopefully, yeah. All right, Ron, you have your hand raised and you're patiently waiting.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you. So I had a couple questions for the applicants. Firstly, how are you going to connect electricity to it? Is it going to be from the above ground or underground?
It'll come down a pole underground.
Okay, thank you. Second, has any discussions with traffic? Because I know there's a light right there. I know across the street there's another driveway. Having a multi-family home and with a traffic light right there, are there any issues with somebody coming out and wanting to turn left with the traffic light right there?
Well, actually, I think the traffic light works to our advantage because it gives you a break in traffic and gives you the opportunity to actually pull out.
To turn right, but I'm saying about turning left. Would that cause any issues? Because if you want to turn left and there's a light there, then well, you can't because the cars start backing up because of the light. That's my concern.
Yeah, I think I've been out there many times. I've never seen an issue where it's queuing up beyond that driveway.
Now, thank goodness. That's one of the only lights in Hopkinton that doesn't have that issue.
Ron, for what it's worth, I know they've used that lot in the past for parking for events at Weston Nurseries, and at least I've parked there a few times, and I don't recall any big issues there. That's just anecdotal, one person's perspective.
Yeah.
But just one perspective.
And so my last comment is somewhat echoing Rob's. If it's not landscaped well and that sort of blends in, I understand you're in a predicament. You have a home there. What else can you put there besides other homes, and without making it look like odd? Like, oh, we have a home and now we have an office building. It doesn't seem right. It's the only thing that even myself comes to mind. That's all I could see. It's the fact it's a single home with a condo complex beside it. That is the part that seems almost disconnected. But again, if it blends, I don't know. Maybe it's better.
Well, I think the landscaping will help in that regard. The other thing is both structures are going to have white trim. Both structures are going to have clapboard siding. So there's a lot of harmony going on architecturally speaking.
Oh, true, very true. No, but again, it still comes down to single family home, bang, 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 a townhouse type look. And so that would have been the same plot of land was the thing that I have never seen before. I'm not saying it's not elsewhere. It's just that's the oddity. But again, there's the restrictions you're put under with a historical home. So I understand you're trying to fit into that.
But think about, if you think that looks odd, think about it look like with a restaurant there or something like that.
I know.
I mean, this is probably the most cohesive thing we could do.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
It'll be done. Yeah.
Is there a requirement that the existing structure maintain or continue on as a residential structure? I know that there is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's open up to the public. I see a few folks here, and I want to give them a chance to comment or ask questions as appropriate. And actually, sorry, before we do that, I see that Phil has raised his hand. Phil, go ahead.
Thanks. Just a couple quick things that Roy didn't touch on. That house, that historical house, there's replacement windows in it now. The windows we're going to use are going to be significantly much nicer. You're going to have ASIC trim. You're going to have ASIC shakes. They're fake slate shingles on the historic home, but they look as good as slate. Absolutely beautiful. There's not much historic on the outside of that house right now, just so you all know that. There's asbestos. It's a mess. What you'll see when this is done, it'll be absolutely beautiful. They're all going to be the same color. I know some people might not. I think the single will be white, hardy plank. The other will be a pearl gray, but they'll all blend. It'll truly look nice. And the landscaping isn't a problem. Whatever, Roy's an expert in this stuff. And I'm all about landscaping. You just drive by my house on Salem Road, you'll see, I didn't buy the stuff at Western Nurseries, but Cavicchio, we bought trees that look like trees. They're not your Home Depot specials. If you go by the corner of Salem and Badger Road, my house is pearl gray with white ASIC trim with all the landscaping. And these will look as nice as the homes that I live in on Salem Road.
And Phil, just to be clear too.
If I could, through the chair, I'm a big believer the landscaping helps sell a house. So I think that Phil and I are on the same page that we want to make sure that the landscaping is sufficiently enhanced to not only be a benefit to the community, but to be a benefit for those people that live there. And frankly, an old friend of mine once had an expression. He was an old-time builder. He said, I can either spend the money paying more interest to the bank, or I can put the money into the house and sell it sooner.
Yeah, Roy, I hope you're right. I think that, again, I think part of what we're all struggling with here is not just is just in general, the idea of what feels like a kind of random 3-unit building sitting next to a historic looking structure, sitting next to, overall in a neighborhood that has a lot of not very historic looking structures around it. So I agree. I'm hopeful that there are some ways that you can blend that in. But I think it's worth noting that the board in general is just a little concerned or has some reservations about how this is going to fit in overall if it does move forward. All right, let's go ahead and is there anyone from the public that wants to comment or ask a question? And if you do, you can just use the raise your hand feature or wave to us, and we can unmute you and can make your comments. All right, I'm not seeing anyone here. All right. Well, I think we made some good progress. I think we've got a couple of homework assignments. We've got a site walk for August 20th. I know that the applicant's going to work with Beta to resolve hopefully all the outstanding issues in their review. And I'm thinking that at this point, it probably makes sense to continue. Our next meeting is August 29th. John? Yes?
Not necessary. My comment's not necessary at this point in time, but since you called on me, if I could make 2 requests of the board between now and then, please review the conditions and please review the findings and see if there's anything you want me to change, add, remove, so that we can speed through that process next meeting, because I know that's a pretty painful part of the process.
Thanks, John. Good reminder. All right. So, so the applicant, does August 29th work to continue?
Yes.
Okay. And on that note, I will entertain a motion to continue the hearing for 83 East Main Street to August 29th, 2022.
So
Mary
moved.
Larson Marlowe, so moved. Sorry.
Randy Young, second.
All right, Mary with the motion, Fran with the second. So we no further discussion. We'll go ahead and vote on that continuance. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Jane?
Okay, so I apologize for falling asleep at the wheel here, but I believe I have to recuse myself because I am actually a neighbor.
Okay. I was wondering about that, but I didn't. I probably should have asked. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yep.
Ronnie?
Ron Pfeiffer, yes.
Paul?
Paul Ostrander, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes as well. So, to the applicant, we will plan to see you at 8 a.m. on August 20th, and then we'll continue to the 29th. So,
Okay.
Thanks. Appreciate your engagement tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right, last order on our agenda is minutes from the joint meeting with the Select Board and Planning Board from June 21st, 2022. So I will, I'm going to assume there aren't any comments, but I will entertain a motion to accept those meeting minutes from June 21st, 2022.
So moved. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Second, Ron Pfeiffer.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Mary, you want to start things off?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Ron?
Ron Pfeiffer, yes.
Paul?
Paul, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. And on that note, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Second. Ron Pfeiffer.
Thanks, Rod. So we no further discussion. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Ron?
Ron Pfeiffer, yes.
Paul?
Paul, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. Thank you all. Have